So today's problem is Leetcode 496 next greater element. So we are given two arrays, which is nums1 and nums2. We have to find the next greater element of those elements which are provided in nums1. Also nums1 is a subset of nums2. So we have to provide only those no greater next greater element which are present in nums1. In this thing, if we look at the constraint, is nums1 and nums2 dot length should be between 1 to 1000, and also nums1, every element of nums1 and nums2 will be lying from 0 to 10 to the power 4. Here some other constraints are all integer of nums1 and nums2 are unique. So we can say that nums1 and nums2 all elements are unique. And the second one is all integers of nums1 also appear in nums2. So nums1 is a subset of nums2. Let's try to explain this with the help of example. Understand this with the help of example, which is this. We are given nums1, nums2 as this, and nums1 as this. In nums1 we have all the query strings, and nums2 have the actual, which is bigger subset of this both. So in nums2 we have 1 3 4 2. For 1, the next greater element we can see is 3. For 3, if we see, the next greater element in these two is 4. For 4, the next greater element in the remaining we can't find, which is -1. For 2, the next greater element we can't find, which is -1. Now for the query string, if we see, we have to answer for 4, which is -1. We have to answer for 1, which is 3, and we have to answer for 2, which is -1. So this should be our answer. The first approach which comes in our mind is the brute force one. For example, for this, what we will do is, we will iterate every element one by one, and we will internally go to the next element to the length and find if we have any next element which is greater than the current element we are examining. For example, for 17, which is at 0th index, we will examine from 1 to 5 if we have any next greater element or not. So for 17, if we examine, we are not having any next greater element, so its answer should be 1, -1. So we will take the result as -1 while processing from the i+1 index to length. If we find any element which is greater than the current element, we will mark the result as that element and will break out of the loop. At the end of the every internal iteration, we will guarantee that we have the result of the ith element. So we will map that result and we return this result. So this we are using 2 for loop. This is overall an order of n square approach, where for every element we are examining the remaining elements. For every element we are examining the remaining elements. So it will be kind of, if we have 5 elements, first we are traveling 4. For the first element we are traveling 4 times. For the second element we are traveling 3 times, then 2 times, then 1 times. Overall it is kind of n square. So to optimize this, we'll move to the another approach, which is with the help of stack. In this, what we do is, we'll first take a stack where we will do, in stack we will do 2 operation. One is push and pop. So when to do push and when to pop. So this question is, when either our stack is empty, we will push, or we are seeing a smaller element than the top element. If we see a smaller element which is smaller element than the top element, then we will push it. When we will pop when we whenever we find any element greater element than the top element. Suppose the top element is 5 and we have found an element 11. So we will pop this 5 and mark it its next greater element as 11. So this we will do in a loop. We will also examine, since we have popped this, we will see what is the next top and we will examine with this current element. Let's try to understand this with an example. Let's take this example, which is nothing but this one, 17. So since our stack is empty and the first element we have seen is 17, we'll push into the stack. Now the next element is 5. Whenever we are seeing a smaller element than the top element, we will simply push it into the stack. So after that, our current element is 3. So 3 is also smaller than the top element. So we will push this 3 into the stack. Now our top element is this, and our current element we have moved from 3 to 11. But in the next, whilst considering this 11 element, we will see that 11 is greater than 3. So we have found an element which is greater than the top element. So we will pop out 3 and mark its next greater element as 11. So after popping out 3, what we get is, we will get the top as 5. Now for the since we have got the top as 5, we will compare 5 and 11. Since we have seen an current element as 11, which is greater than the top element, we will pop out 5 and mark its next greater element as 11. Now we will see 17. So 17 is our peak element, but here in since our current element is 11, which is smaller than 17, we will push 11 to the stack and we will move for the next element, which is 6. So 6 is also smaller than 11, so we will push this into the stack and we will move for the next element, which is 13. So our current element is 13. We will try to compare this 13 with the top of the stack. So if we see that 13 is greater than 6, that means we have seen an element which is greater than 6 and which is 13. So we will pop this 6 and mark its next greater element as 13. Now the next top is 11. We will compare 11 and 13. We will see that 13 is greater than 11. So we will pop out this 11 and mark this its next greater element as 13. So we have 11. Now what we will do is we will push 13, because since we will compare 13 and 17, and 13 is a smaller number than 17, so we will push 13 into this stack. So this way we have, if we see, then we don't have any next element. So we have marked 6 as 13, 11 as 13, 5 as 11, 3 as 11. And the remaining element we are left with is 17 and 13. For 17 and 13, we can conclude that we haven't seen any next greater element, which is, we will mark those elements as -1. So this is the basic approach of creating the next greater element for every element. But we want it in a query string format, which is this format. We want only for the concerned elements. So what we will do is, we will create an hash map of this query, where our key would be this query elements, which is 412. We will iterate through this and we will add its value as -1, since we initially don't know the next greater element of this. Our algorithm will do the work where we will be finding out the next greater element. Suppose for 1 we found out the next greater element is 3. So 1, we have marked the next greater element as 3. What we will do is, we will check if 1 is present in the hash map or not. Since 1 is present in the hash map, we will update its key value to this 3. Similarly, we will check for 3 and 4. So we will mark 3 its next greater element as 4, but since 3 is not present in the hash map, we won't do any changes here. We will do for the remaining and finally return the result, which is 412 as -131 by creating an array result. So this the code we can see here. Here in this code, what we are doing is we are creating an hash map and we are creating a stack. So we are iterating through nums1.length. What we are doing, this is nums1 is nothing but our query string. What we are doing is we are assigning every nums1 as -1. For the next element, which is nums2.length, we are iterating the element one by one. We have two conditions. One is push condition, one is pop condition. When we will pop then only when the stack is not empty and our current element is lesser than the our peak element is lesser than the current element. So what we will do, we will take the element, we will pop up the element, and we will check if our hash map, which is internally nums1 array, if it has the same key or not. Since if it is having the same element which we popped up, we will mark its next greater element as current element, and then we will continue iterating while till the stack is not empty and the peak element is lesser than the current element. In the push condition, when we will push when the stack is empty, that condition we will push, or the peak element is greater than the current element, then we will push. So these two conditions will be pushing this. So after this iteration, we will be having everything stored in hash map. So we need to return a result array which will be consisting of all the results of all the element which are in the query string. What we will do is we will iterate through this nums1.length and we will mark its result as what we get from the hash map which we have stored in the key value for pair form. So we will return this result. So concluding to this video, if we run this, we will be getting the correct answer. Thank you.